my name is Sadhbh, and today we are going to be talking about all the books I read in December. Welcome to my December wrap-up. Now, I structured a TBR around this month for the first time and wasn't exactly very festive. I was not feeling reading books in that moment that were Christmas related or holiday related. However, I did kind of switch up a little bit of that TBR into what we're going to talk about today. I do have one or two festive things that I read, which I'm excited about, but not nearly as excited as some other books that I'm going to talk to you about today. Again, good number of them, so let's get right into it. Okay, I'm gonna go in chronological order. This book right here is The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. It is the second book in the Sadhbh trilogy, and it was my favorite of this month. It also made it into my favorite books of 2020. So again, this book is the second in a series, the first being The City of Brass, but we still are following our main character, Nahri, who summons a mystical djinn, and his name is Dara. And Dara whisks her away from her home in Cairo and brings her to the magical city of Sadhbh. And she figures out really quickly she's going to have to rely on her instincts to survive. Now, Sadhbh is in the aftermath of a very devastating battle, and Nahri is having to learn to forge a new path for herself. But as she embraces her heritage and the power that it holds, she is being watched by the king who is currently on the throne. So she is essentially trapped, and the king sits on the throne where Nahri's family used to sit. And so being watched like that, one misstep can doom her tribe. Meanwhile, we are following another character named Ali, who has been exiled for daring to defy his father, and he is forced to rely on some frightening abilities that have been gifted to him. But in doing so, he threatens to unearth an old family secret. And lastly, there's another perspective that, just to vaguely put it, is a threat that is coming, and that's all I'm gonna say. I read The City of Brass last month and loved it, and I have to say, similar experience with The Kingdom of Copper. 5 out of 5 stars for the world building, the character development, for the political movements, and just everything is so high stake, and I really cared about what happened to these characters. Nahri is a very skilled healer, and she is coming into a role called Banu Nahida, which is basically this elevated and very worshipped healer, something that she is being trained into without a lot of experience. She's healing people at levels that she doesn't really have the skill to be healing people at. High stakes, and she's definitely just like thrown into it, and you see her scrambling to like get back on her feet, and she has help and she has enemies, and you don't know who is who. I am very excited to read The Empire of Gold, which is the third and final installment of the trilogy. I have these beautiful copies ordered, and I wanted to get the matching paperback one for The Empire of Gold, but that is not currently in publication, and it will be soon, so I'll have it soon. But in the meantime, I may or may not be planning to reread both The City of Brass and Kingdom of Copper. Yeah, these. They're fantastic. They're probably one of my favorite books that I read in 2020. Yeah, it's a little bit of an incoherent review, but all I can say is if you are interested in a multi-perspective deep dive into high-stakes politics, epic fantasy, would highly recommend the Sadhbh trilogy. The next book that I read was The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare, which follows our two characters, Emma Gladstone and the Duke of Ashbury. It is a romance, and the essential plot line is the Duke of Ashbury is looking to get married like right now for money reasons and for property reasons. Emma Gladstone shows up in a wedding dress. There's a story behind that, but it's very funny. And he's like, yep, you will do, and here are the terms, and I need an heir, and then once you give me an heir, you can like have this really nice house and you never have to see me again. And she's like, all right, sweet, you're rich. I don't know you, but like that doesn't sound like half bad life. Sounds good. So they get married and romance ensues. This is my first real romance centered. I would read a lot of like contemporary romance. This is just a very different experience. One thing that really struck me about this was how funny it was. I wasn't expecting to be this comical, But yeah, it is definitely like that subgenre of Regency romance. And so this was my first true romance and then also my first Regency romance. Fantastic, 10 out of 10. I had a great time reading this. Of course, it has its flaws. The writing is kind of repetitive. There are definitely some moments where I'm like, this is not a healthy relationship. All in all, I have a great time with this, and I gave it 4 stars. Ooh, yes. Okay, the next book I read was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which is a contemporary romance, and this book is about 2 individuals who work together, and throughout their relationship of working together, they do not like each other. This is definitely an enemies to lovers trope type of book. It's really brought out when there is a promotion up for grabs and both individuals are qualified, and so they both start to compete for it. Now they've been in competition in little spurts and little like bats over time, but this is the first time that they were really like, all right, here is a legitimate competition and I'm gonna beat you. Romance ensues from that, and I will kind of just leave it at that. I will say it was pretty freaking adorable. I read this because of Noelle Gallagher. So yeah, if you have any interest in contemporary romance stories, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. I also believe that this is being adapted into a Netflix film, and I will be watching that when it comes out. I'm not sure when it does. Okay, I just looked it up and I can't find it. So if you guys know when it is being released, let me know. But either way, I'll be looking for it, and when I find it, you know, we're definitely gonna watch it. So I also gave that 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I'm gonna talk about is The Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. And this book is a fantasy, follows Diana Bishop, who is a witch, and she comes from a very prestigious, very well-known line of witches. Her mothers, her grandmothers have been extremely influential in that world. And she is a scholar, she is an academic, and she denies her heritage and her being a witch in the name of being an academic without cheating, without using her abilities in purposeful ways or not intentionally. She wants to make sure that her research is without the tainting of witchcraft. I thought this was an incredibly cool concept, and what I did not know was that it would turn into a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and instead of like the red versus the white, it's witches and vampires. I did not like this book. One, it's way too long to be about subject matter that I don't really care about that much. 2, it got less and less like believable, and I'm all about the suspension of belief just a little bit when you're reading, especially if you're reading fantasy. There is definitely just like, all right, this is escapism, like we are suspending a lot of disbelief here, like that is fine with me. So again, I was here for the witch that was like tentative about using her magic in academia, and she was like trying to disown. Thought that was really interesting. The vampire romance, so I was like, ugh. And then at the end, it just got so wild, and it was really slow there in the middle. So 1 out of 5 stars. Did not like this book. I'm sorry, didn't like it. The next book I read was Glass Town by Isabel Greenberg. This is a graphic novel. It's a fictional retelling, but it pulls from some true stories and some true retellings of the Bronte siblings. Basically, it uses the concepts that were found in their writings about this glass town and characters that were really made up by them when they were kids and places that they really wrote about when they were kids and put it into this book. Not only does it explore Glass Town, but it also explores the relationship between the Brontes. It touches on their experience a little bit when they were growing up in their family versus when they went off to boarding school, and then as they were growing up and became teachers themselves or a governess. It kind of pulled in the concept of what is real and what's not. Once they spend so much time in Glass Town, there was a lot of those elements that were pulled into the real world and a lot of the real world that was pulled into Glass Town. And so the more and more that these kids grow up, the more and more they miss it, and they kind of start to dive back into it. So it's just a reflection on how a product of imagination can really influence and stay with you throughout your life. As far as the illustrations go, they were very sketchy, not finalized kind of feel, and I love that type of informal drawing. But I read this actually in a reading vlog last month, and Basically, one of the things that I said that I enjoyed most about this was the way that the color palette changes, and I thought that was a really clever way to depict mood and depict change in time. Like a chronological line was divided up using different color palettes, and I thought that was really clever. So I gave 4 out of 5 stars to Glass Town. The next book that I read was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which is a classic, and it follows our main character, Esther Greenwood, who is extremely talented. She is beautiful and well revered and well liked, and it's very inside her brain. You get to hear a lot about how she's thinking, what she's feeling, and it gives you a very, very close look at her emotions becoming more intense as insanity is growing and festering and finding a deeper root in her psyche, as well as the insanity is also being rationalized a little bit. And so we're getting to watch this, and it brings you really, really close to that. So I would say trigger warning, big trigger warning for mental health issues, for suicidal thoughts, for cutting, self-harm. If that is not the stuff that you want to read or you are wary of it, do your research before you pick this up, because it can get very intense. It chronicles her brain as she is moving through life and moving through her disorder, her mental disorder, and bringing her closer and closer to a breakdown. And you're very close to it, so you get to be rationalized with her the way that she is rationalizing as well. This is quite dark, and it has been revered as a very haunting American classic because of Sylvia Plath's ability to pull you into those dark corners of someone's psyche and make you kind of feel and rationalize with them why they are thinking the way that they're thinking. I think for the time that this book must have been like revolutionary. It was published in 1953. I think there was more conversation, but I don't think that there was enough conversation about mental health and how it influences your life and how do we treat it and how are we friends to those who are struggling, how are we mothers to those who are struggling, how are we a sibling to someone who is struggling with mental health. So I do think that it was beneficial in that way. However, I struggled with how to rate this because I did feel you need to be the right person to read this book. It was definitely very heavy. I will definitely be reading her poetry because she is a fantastic writer. She has a great grasp on words and construction of sentences and evoking emotion. I will be looking into and researching first more of Sylvia Plath's work. So yeah, 3 out of 5. Boy, the next book that I read was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, and boy oh boy did I love this historical fiction. Gosh, it was fantastic. This book follows our main character, Vivian Morris. Basically, Vivian is kicked out of her university after failing all of her classes after her first year, and so her mother ships her off to Manhattan to live with her aunt, and her aunt runs a theater. Vivian gets to meet a number of very interesting characters, establish some meaningful and not so meaningful relationships. It basically chronicles her life as she goes from 19 years old into her, late 60s, 70s, 80s, as she goes into a career that she really cares about, meets people who she really cares about, and establishes the lifelong relationships versus the fleeting and temporary ones. Throughout the book, Vivian is definitely grappling with why she doesn't want what normal girls her age wants, and why she does want stuff that is deemed bad or inattainable by her culture and her status in life. I felt it was a really great exploration of human desire and how it can surpass and reach beyond generational or cultural limitations. I also got the atmosphere of this book that was incredibly sassy. It was just like a lot of fun. So obviously if you're in a theater, you're getting to participate. She works on the clothes and does the costumes, and she knows the manager, and she knows her aunt and the coordinator and the dancers and the actors and the singers, and it's just like a bunch of found family, kind of like a circus troupe. It kind of gave me Greatest Showman vibes, except a little bit more risque. But yes, this book was fantastic, and I do recommend. It was a 4 out of 5 for me. The next book that I read was Withering Heights by Emily Bronte, which is a classic that many know. This book follows Catherine and Heathcliff, who are childhood friends, and you watch them grow up, destined to be soulmates. Life gets in the way, politics gets in the way, culture gets in the way, and you kind of watch them, as opposites as they are, start to butt heads. You see Catherine, who is willfully childish and lighthearted, and she's trying her best to stay that way. And Heathcliff, who is notoriously, he's just a darker character. He's just a little gloomy. This book is about heartbreak and thwarted desire, and it is all right. I did not love this one. I was a bit disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. I thought the writing was really good. I enjoyed some of the dialogue, and definitely like some of the relationships. I liked the way that they were explored. However, there was nothing about this book that really stuck out to me or grabbed me in a way that was different than anything else I've experienced. There was nothing about this book that was particularly memorable, and I am sorry to say that for those who love this book. Later down the road, that might constitute some more research and possibly a Cliff Notes summary read, and then eventually a reread, because if there's something that in my research down the road that sticks out to me that I'm like, oh, I didn't pick that up on my first read, obviously I'm gonna reread it. But yes, unfortunately I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was 25 Days Till Christmas. This book is written by Poppy Alexander, and it is a holiday, contemporary, got some romance in there. And I definitely read this, obviously, for the festive vibes. I think I read this the week before Christmas. It follows the main character, Kate Potter, who is a mother, and she used to love Christmas. However, after her husband passed away, she is now a young widow and finds Christmas extremely stressful for her and her son. Essentially, her friend sees that she's extremely stressed, also quite lonely, and this woman is like, hey girl, what's the deal? Why are you so stressed? And she's like, it's Christmas, man. I want to provide this atmosphere. I want to provide fun, but I'm working a job which I don't like and doesn't pay me a lot of money. And I am not in the position emotionally or financially to create this magical Christmas that I want to create for my son. And so her friend is like, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make you a list of 25 things to do. And in the 25 days leading up until Christmas, you and Jack are gonna do one of these things every day. And this is what's gonna set you up for a happy and stress-free, you're still gonna create some magic, but we're gonna do it on a budget, and basically gives her this list. The book is structured into 25 chapters, one for every day of December leading up till Christmas. During this time, Kate crosses with this other guy who is also super lonely because he had just lost his sister. In the synopsis, this is not really pitched so much as a romance, but boy, is romance heavy in this book. So overall, I thought it was cute, I thought it was fun, festive, definitely gave me holiday vibes, but did it bring me anything that I was like, wow, this is super memorable, or this really tugged on my heartstrings? No, there are better books out there. 2 out of 5. So the next book that I read was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. And this book follows Frances Janvier, who is a student in her high school, and she is extremely smart, or at least she is trying to be. She studies all the time. She's head girl. She is a known nerd and known academic. And in her social group, she just doesn't have a whole lot of like solid connection in her life. And so this book basically explores what it's like to be a high school student and trying to decide and decipher what you want and what you want to do and who you want to be. And you get these really, really big, tough life questions, and you thrust them at a 16-year-old and their brain just goes, bleh. Boy, oh boy, if I could have read this book when I was 16. The other character in this book is Alid Last. He makes a podcast called Universe City, and Frances Janvier is she's big old fangirl. Alid Last is not the known producer. It is anonymously published. That's one of the things that is a theme here, is he does not want people to know that he is the publisher of this thing. The creator of Universe City goes by the name Radio Silence. Through some circumstances, Alid and Frances become friends, and they are basically embark on this journey with Universe City, just diving deep into some past stuff comes up, some future stuff is dealt with, and it is just a wholesome exploration of friendship and what it's like to know absolutely zero about what you want and what you want to do and who you want to be. I definitely thought that this was one of the cases where the main character, Frances Janvier, and her mom have such a great relationship. Very healthy, very nice boundaries, great respect from both sides. And I was like, you know what? Thank God they didn't do like the broken family. I just thought it was really cool of Alice Oseman to portray this whole crisis that goes on for students who are of that age without making family dynamics and broken family a part of the narrative. So I appreciate that. I thought this book was fantastic. I would highly recommend. I will be reading more Alice Oseman, and I gave this a 4 out of 5. And the last book that I read this December was The Cocktail Hour Under the Tree of Forgetfulness by Alexandra Fuller. This book is a nonfiction. It's a memoir done obviously by Alexandra Fuller, but the content, the main character is her mom, Nicola Fuller, and boy oh boy is this woman eccentric. This book documents Nicola Fuller's life in childhood of Central Africa, going into being a teenager, young adult, meeting her husband, Alexandra Fuller's father, and starting a family. It documents her relationship with her mom, and it explores dynamics across multi-generational levels. It is complete with real pictures. One of my favorite being this one, which is also on the cover. That's so cute. She's holding a monkey's hand, it's real. And this book pulls no punches. Like, this book is about mental health, it's about loyalty, insanity. It's definitely a great exploration of family dynamics. This book also features some really beautiful places and locations and talks about some historical events. I thought it was extremely interesting. This woman has led a full and ridiculous life. She was just very cool to read about, and I really enjoyed this memoir. And that is it. That is all the books that I read in December. Overall, I think I had a relatively good reading month. There were a few kind of like, couple bad ones, and ultimately, I love to focus on the good. I got a really good 5 out of 5 read from the month, so I'm very pleased with that. All right, guys, that is it. Those are all the books that I read in December. Just very exciting. I read 11 books, which I'm quite pleased with. And I'm thankful that you tuned in. Hope you enjoyed yourself and had a great time. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. You wanna help me hold up some books? And then I'll leave below my head.